This conference will now be recorded.
All right, it's about 6:30. Let's go ahead and get started. We do have a quorum. All members are present except Mike Snyder, who is with us online. Reminder about using the microphones when you're making comments or remarks or questions. We do need to adopt the agenda. Any additions or changes?
Move to adopt the agenda submitted.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Mike says aye also. Okay. All right, briefly, any public comment before we start? Trying to start doing this. Okay, thank you. First new business, we need to adopt minutes from February 3rd, 2025. If we can find those. Okay, this was the comp plan review. Any corrections?
Move to
discussion?
approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt the minutes as presented from February 3rd, 2025. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And I think Mike said aye also there. Minutes from February 5th. Need to take a, okay, see if I can find those. Has anyone located those? Are they in the back, maybe? Oh, okay.
Move to adopt the minutes from February 5th as presented.
Motion's been made. Motion been made and seconded to adopt the minutes from the February 5th, 2025 meeting. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
And Mike says aye also.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just to let you know, for the remotely attending member per 6-11-2, we just need to state where he's participating from.
Okay. Did you get that, Mike? Can you tell us where you're participating from?
You want to know the location? Is that what you're asking?
Correct. Yes,
Antigua.
Antigua. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you. But we probably had better weather here today. All right, our first case is case number RZ-10-30-24-01, Blue Ridge Ag LLC. This is asking for a recovery of by right uses. This is the second workshop. Mr. Josh Heggie, on behalf of Blue Ridge Ag LLC, is seeking to recover the by right B1 business uses of his property located on Seminole Trail, tax map number 32-102. An application for rezoning, case number RZ-04-23-4, was previously approved by the Board of Supervisors in March of 2023 with conditions. As a result, the applicant lost the right to some B1 uses by proffer. The applicant's business needs have changed, and he is seeking the restoration of all the B1 by right uses. All right, Mr. Nichols, anything to add there?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The application has remained essentially the same as when we started. Essentially, this application is a simple zoning map amendment. We're seeking to rezone the property from B1 with conditions to just straight B1. So all of the by right uses would be included. I think it's pertinent to point out that under the current conditions, we only have a single use. If we look on the screen, the green use is the only one that's currently allowed. And the applicant would like to be able to expand entrepreneurial opportunities into other avenues. And so I will leave that for your discussion.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Nichols? Yes, Pete.
Does this piece of property have a land disturbance permit?
It does. It does.
Does it have a VDOT entrance permit?
To the best of my knowledge, VDOT finds what they're doing currently acceptable. I have emails from the previous application as well as the current activity. Mr. Weekly asked VDOT to comment after the traffic accident that occurred recently out there, and VDOT said that the activity was acceptable at this time. They went on to state that with his intended use, they did not anticipate that a turning lane would be required at this time, but his ENS is correct. I have a letter from Mr. Sexton that I'll be happy to forward to you. He's permitted. His silt fence is up. Mr. Heggie is in compliance with all the applicable regulations to the best of my knowledge.
Mr. Nichols, I beg to differ with the silt regulations being in compliance. I got a whole stack of pictures right here. Silt fence is down, 4-foot holes through the silt fence. There's a trap there with no stone in it to silt the water that's coming out of the trap. The water's running right down the hill where the silt fence is out of there. Isn't there a regulation that says you cannot bury asphalt?
Well, while I have some questions regarding the photographs that you have, I would encourage you to speak to our ENS administrator about those particular complaints.
But you, at the last meeting, when I asked about this, you told me you and Joe were there the day of the accident and everything was good. I
And-
took these pictures the next morning.
Okay? So, I mean, I went, the silt fence was there, Joe has been sent, the silt fence is there, and he says they're in compliance. The man who's in charge of administration.
Compliance with big holes in the silt fence, trees knocking it down, no silt fence where the traps is. I put up a 100-mile silt fence. I at one time had a license for Virginia and Maryland, and I know what it's supposed to look like. And it ain't in compliance by no means of no book I ever saw.
Well, I mean, what I would say in response is if you have a complaint, that you contact the ENS administrator on that particular program. I would also ask in your site visit, let's say, did you make an appointment and were accompanied by the applicant?
No, I did not.
Okay? So,
And most of this stuff can be seen from 29 on the shoulder.
I'm going to say that for the context of our application tonight, we're talking about a zoning map amendment. And while I would encourage the planning commission to stay on that particular topic, I'll defer to the chairman if he wants to continue to unpack the ENS issue.
Well, it ain't only a ENS issue, it's a highway issue too. You gotta have permits to work in the highway, to set signs in the highway. You know, here's a highway book, and it tells you very clearly, you gotta have signs out there, and you gotta have permission to put the signs out there.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask if you would like me to continue the discussion on topics that are different than the zoning map amendment. And if you would like me to continue, I'm happy to do so.
I think, in view of the amount of material we've got to cover tonight, we can perhaps come back to this if we need to later.
So what we can say is, anybody can just go do what they want, they don't follow the rules, 'cause that's what's happening here. You clearly cannot bury asphalt, it's got oil in it.
Mr. Commissioner, that is not what we're saying. What we're saying is that the topic of our application tonight is a zoning map amendment and those land uses. The administering of particular ordinances and programs is underway. And it's not that they're not important, they are. It's just not the subject of our application tonight.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I certainly, I'm glad I'm sitting here, not up there. I understand the concerns raised, and while you definitely have control of the meeting and what you want to consider, I just respectfully request that definitely we take Mr. Elliott's documentation to where we'll take that to the ENS administrator. So I don't want to look past that. I do think an issue is raised. We'll take that to our program administrator for comment. That you obviously won't happen here tonight. Our ENS administrator is not here. But I think being it raised, we'll have ENS address that in advance of the
Yeah.
public hearing, I think, that's coming up.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. It's basically a separate issue anyway. It's not dealing with the rezoning application specifically so much as it with noncompliance with some other potential regulations. Okay, let's move forward then. Is there any other question for Mr. Nichols?
Mr. Chairman, I do.
Yes, sir. This is-
Yeah, I just wanted to know that if, per item number 5 of the original rezoning application, it was noted that on or before April 1, 2025, we had to have that 30-foot section of the driveway paved. Is that going to move forward to the new rezoning, or is that abated? I'm just asking the question if he still has to, still needs to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a question for Mr. Nichols, yes.
Mr. Snyder, this rezoning application, if approved, would not have any of the previous conditions that were established. This would be a straight rezoning like we've done with many other properties. A portion of the reason why the applicant stated he came was that he felt he was having he would be delayed in completing some of these things. Ultimately, the goal is to do essentially all of these things, but timing is definitely an issue. But if this particular application is approved, then none of these conditions that were previously attached would carry.
Okay, so essentially we are going to be abandoning the previous rezoning altogether.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this application is for B1 straight. Yep, no conditions.
So nothing involved with the previous rezoning is any longer applicable.
This is similar to what we just did with Virginia Lawnscapes. They were, A1 and they went straight B1. The rights would be the same. It's the same district.
Yes, sir.
What are the bylaws or the regulations on proffers? You can't subscribe any or offer any, it has to be made by the applicant.
You may not ask the applicant directly for proffers or conditions. They may of their own accord bring conditions before you if they think it would make their application be viewed more favorably.
So essentially, this is as if the previous rezoning had never taken place. We're starting at the beginning, looking at it as if this was not B1 at all to begin with. it was R1, I think, is that correct?
Essentially, that's correct. I mean, the question in front of you is, are you, let's look at the rights here. The question in front of you is this particular piece of property acceptable for the rights that are granted in the B1 zoning district? If this piece of property is acceptable for the B1 rights, then you should vote to approve it. If this piece of property is not suitable for these particular rights, then you should recommend denial of it. At the end of the day, when we look at the comp plan, and I plan on writing a statement on this as we get closer to the as we get closer to the public hearing, we'll publish a packet on this with my opinion. But I do think the comprehensive plan looks favorably on B1 along the 29 corridor, the same as we've considered for other parcels. And so, if you have thoughts on specific uses that you don't think would be acceptable, it would be a good time.
All right, I think both what Mr. Elliott and Mr. Snyder have been approaching here, and I'm kind of thinking along these same lines here. First of all, that is not the description of the case. He's seeking to recover, but in essence, what we're actually trying to do is to go back and consider the rezoning from the beginning.
What do you mean by in the
I
beginning?
don't understand.
If he were simply seeking to recover, these questions about has he met the conditions in the original rezoning might have some pertinence. But in essence, he has abandoned the original, this is what you're telling me, he's abandoned the original rezoning, and he's starting over, asking again to rezone, I think it was R1, wasn't it?
Well, I don't think that's
To B1.
If it helps, I'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
So right now, his land is B1 with nothing except that first permissible use on that list, right?
Is it B1 only because it was rezoned, or it wasn't originally B1?
No, but as it stands today, it's B1 conditional, and the conditions, among the conditions are, he's got the retail store ability and not the rest of them, in addition to the other list of conditions that he proffered back when it got rezoned to B1.
Okay, so in addition to asking us to renew, to restore the by right uses, he's also asking us to eliminate the conditions that were on the original.
He's basically saying to go from B1 limited with conditions to just B1 with no conditions.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, every time that we have a rezoning that is with conditions, it is essentially its own zoning district. We made a custom zoning district for this parcel. So that is his zoning, and he's looking to rezone to B1 instead of B1 with conditions. So has he actively abandoned the conditions that were there? I don't think so, but I think that he understands, and Mr. Heggie is certainly more than capable of answering for himself, but I think that he understands he would like to do something different and has applied and asked this body to do so.
Mr. Chairman, can I make
Yes,
a general comment? Commissioner Elliott, thank you for your work on just checking that site out and everything. No doubt, enforcement regulation and all that could use a little tightening up all the time, but, it's not uncommon for somebody to come in here that's been out of compliance for, a number of reasons, but, when I look at the rezoning of this, the only use that I see that's really out of place there, just kind of given the residential nature of that area, would be like a commercial dairy. As really, anything else, really, it would take different work on VDOT's standpoint as far as what the entrance would would be, but as far as the neighborhood, and there is some R1 adjoining that, I think. You know, I think it meets pretty much all the B1 criteria that I would be looking for through the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance. I don't like to see things come through this way, because it's sort of like, not like a bait and switch necessarily, you know, but it's a little, it muddies the water a little bit, I think. But people's plans change, you know, and that's understandable, and I think it's, you know, an appropriate place for a B1 piece of property.
Okay. And essentially, at this point, whether that's the intention or not, all 6 of the conditions listed, as well as the proffer, are moot. They're not there anymore.
If the application is approved, it would have no conditions attached at this
Okay, no
time, as the
conditions.
applicant has not proffered any.
Okay, any other question for?
Chairman, I have a
Yes, sir.
question. So if this is changed to B1, unconditional B1, condition of the property, I don't know, you could build on it.
I think that is a consideration for the applicant to take when he decides to pursue a site plan or building. He, like all the rest of us who have property, are responsible for our own engineering and the cost to construct. It is entirely possible that somebody could have a property and have it rezoned and it not be financially feasible to do something. This is not a guarantee of, you know, any kind of feasibility to actually execute one of these things. This is us simply deciding that the zoning map would be suitable for B1 here. Or not.
And assuming the rezoning is approved, construction of buildings, et cetera, would require some kind of site plan to come before.
A zoning permit is required, in which during that time, we require a site plan. We require health department and VDOT participation in that process. They have to get permits. If the land disturbance is over 40,000 square feet, this body will see the site plan, and we'll see it just like we're seeing Anabaptist for the next case. We would handle it the same as we do any other commercial activity. All the appropriate steps will be taken.
Let me ask another question, Chairman. Say I have a piece of property and I put fill in it, just go in there and start filling it everywhere. And I fill more than an acre. Should I have to have an ENS plan?
If you are disturbing more than 1 acre of dirt, not only will you have to have an ENS plan, but you'll also have to have a general construction permit from the Department of Environmental Quality.
We would have took, just take a look at the size of this.
Again, I will defer you to our ENS administrator for that particular question.
Yeah, and it's kind of beyond what we're looking at to consider what he's gonna have to do to meet regulations and so forth. We're just trying to figure out if this is an appropriate, use for this property.
I clearly understand that, Mr. Chairman. At the same time, I'm looking at what could this be used for?
Yep.
If I want to pass it to make it unconditional B1, what could it be used for? I know what the book says it could be used for, but what I see there, what could it be used for?
You mean in a practical sense with the
Yes.
property itself, yeah. I think, as Mr. Nichols says, probably that's up to the property owner, since, I mean, I guess really our only question is this an appropriate location for a B1?
At this time, that is the essential question. Is this an appropriate location for B1 zoning or not?
With the knowledge that there are no conditions and no proffers. This is a full, open B1.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, sir.
I actually second Mr. Cowan's comments pretty much to a T. I do appreciate Pete's diligence to go out there and look at the site, and actually have some pretty good concerns that he does as well. But I also don't see neighbors out here, and usually on these public hearings, if neighbors have a lot of concerns, that's usually what I take to heart most whenever I make my consideration. Quite frankly, anything in the 814, which is public service, if I were a neighbor, I'd probably be chagrined to that. Wouldn't want that on 29 in that curve either. So to the applicant, that's some of these things that you may, could use or to strike in a voluntary proffer. Voluntary, of course, may be considered, but like I said, I think Nathan said it meets with our comp plan. Some uses probably better than others, but without any general comment from neighbors or the public, which we'll get to in a minute, and maybe there is, but I don't see a lot of uproar with rezoning this.
Any other questions for Mr. Nichols at this point? All right, to the applicant, would you identify yourself and make a statement perhaps, and then answer any questions?
Sure. Good evening. Is the mic on? Seems to be. There we go. Good evening. My name is Josh Heggie. As we discussed before, and as well as this evening, I'm requesting the ability to sell other products in addition to homestead supplies because of the change in market in one product line with the homestead supplies, as we discussed previously, due to foreign competition. So I don't think I have a lot to add to that. I would maybe just add a couple of comments to some of the discussion that we had this evening. Yeah, to the silt fence, I walked it again today, removed several branches, tree limbs that came down in the ice storm. I am not aware of a 4-foot gap, but I would be happy to review that with anyone. I would mention there is a former silt fence from a previous project that is down. There's a new silt fence, but again, I stand to be educated perhaps. To the entrance, I had a meeting with the VDOT engineer, Dylan, today. Looking at that, we've been working with Tim Gray, VDOT out of Culpeper, as far as erecting signs in the road. That's fully in collaboration with him. Were there any other questions?
Anyone have a question for Mr. Hagee?
I do have one.
Yes, okay.
Is there any particular reason that you granted the proffers before and restricted yourself this much?
Yeah, well, it was, what can I say? It was probably based on a recommendation of the zoning administrator I was working with at that time, and it was all I expected to need at that time. But we had plenty of business with the glass bottles that we were moving online, and that was all I ever expected to sell was stainless steel dairy and glass bottles, and glass bottles was 80% of our revenue at that time, and now it's less than 10% due to Chinese competition. So I am looking to add some other product lines, such as backyard storage solutions, containers, that aren't specifically homestead supplies, just to help keep revenue and cover overhead.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I've got one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mike.
So I'm just going to ask him if there was, and I think it's okay myself that it's on 29. I don't really see a problem here at all, to be quite honest. And I don't really want to make it hard on the applicant to do what he needs to do. But I am just more interested in what we had talked about previously on the entrance in and out of 29, and was interested to know if VDOT had said anything to him about their thoughts on what he would need to do.
That is for me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Snyder. Appreciate that question. VDOT has not mentioned that they would require pavement with the entrance upgrade. I'm trying to recall, they would have talked about, of course, having an engineered plan and whatever that entails. They did not mention asphalt. I would love to have that paved and hope to do so. With the heavy truck traffic currently with construction work, it would tear up asphalt. So I would hope to wait until the heavy truck traffic is done, until the construction is done, excavation of the property, to, prepare surface on that road.
Any other question, Mike?
No, that answers it. I just wanted to know if they had advised you anything, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Been issued a permit to do shoulder work there?
No, sir.
You did shoulder work there.
Okay. Shoulder work. Okay. Feel free to
When I say
elaborate.
When I say shoulder work, from the center of that road, northbound 29, from the center of that road back 50 feet is VDOT's right of way.
Mhm.
And if you work in that area, that's considered shoulder area.
Okay.
You're supposed to have a permit to work in that area on the shoulder.
Okay. Mhm. I'm not aware that I worked in the area of the VDOT right
You want
away.
that millings right up to the edge of the pavement, so it had to be in the
The
right of way.
edge of the paving?
Yeah, where the pavement stops for 29, it's millings.
Oh,
right
on
to
my,
the
on my
edge.
entrance, you mean?
Yes,
My
that's your
entrance.
entrance.
No, I spoke with the VDOT engineer, and he approved me to work on that entrance.
Well, I don't know, the highway manual says you have to.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I did speak with Willis Bedsall on the matter before working on the entrance. And
Okay,
I'm also not aware that I buried any asphalt on the property, but I'd be glad to be shown that.
You can see it right now.
Okay.
They dumped in there all day today.
It is piled,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's being pushed over that slope. And this dirt that you had right here, sir,
Mhm.
put a layer of asphalt over the top of that.
Yes, sir. That is asphalt millings for.
No, that's big pieces. I know the
Okay,
difference between
well, there
little
are
and big
chunks,
pieces.
you're correct, but it's top cover, I'm not burying it. But, yeah, sorry.
yeah, let's move forward here. I agree with Mike and several of the other members that the location is reasonable for B1. And I also agree in some ways with what Mr. Elliott is saying, that there are some B1 uses permitted by right, which I don't think are appropriate for that property. And, we're not trying to tell you what to do with your property as such, except that if we give you the unrestricted uses by right on B1, there are some of these things that would end up being, I think, inappropriate for the property. And to begin with, you probably narrowed the field too far with your original proffer. But now you've opened it up totally. You're asking for making no proffer for any restrictions. So I'm a little ambivalent because there are some of these things that just shouldn't be there, I think. So that's a discussion, not a question. I'm just making a comment there.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes, sir.
if I may, if you don't mind, and I'm doing this for the benefit of the applicant.
Yeah.
Are there any particular uses that you're worried about? That you mind sharing? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot. You don't have to answer that question.
Well, the 814, you've got public services. That certainly would not be an appropriate place for, say, a firehouse or sewage treatment plant or any of these things that are listed there is available. 813, you've got things, the public use, assembly hall, bank, saving and loan institution. All of these things would require a significantly greater changing of the entrance, because they would not be the light commercial use or whatever they're giving you now. And, you know, those two in particular, also a service business probably would require a whole lot more traffic at that site. So there's three major areas that bother me. And from what you're saying, you're not interested in those. So that kind of leaves us, maybe just ask for what you are interested in.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes, sir.
may. So, you know, if our B1 by right uses are not suitable for B1, then we should revisit the ordinance at some point and take it out. I think I heard Mr. Nichols suggest maybe you have a B1 and a B1 light or something. But of course, that's down the road. But we've got another case here tonight to discuss that's just turning something from A1 to B1, okay? Period, the end. That's no different than what he's doing here, so.
Well, I think, and this is where I agree with Mr. Elliott, I think, the location and the land itself, the terrain, has to have some impact on the decision about whether this is actually appropriate for the B1, considering all the things that can be done there. Now, we have some, we just recently did one where they're redoing the whole earth there, at MWP, or Cardinal, whatever they call it now. They're going to be doing a lot of earth moving there. And we were aware of that up front, and we knew that was going to happen. But in this property, given that, you know, it's true, it's on 29, we do want commercial and business uses on the 29 corridor, but the property itself is located in, kind of in a questionable area, I guess you would say. Access is problematic. You're working on that, I understand that. That's, you know, I think the location, the land itself does have an impact on what could be done on it. And we have similar things where we see residential building on property in the mountains where the slopes are extreme and things like that. We do have to consider the terrain, I think. Somebody can help me out of trouble here. Any further comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to just simply add to the discussion that the sight line, we keep talking about a curve here, but the visibility out of that particular driveway is almost 1/3 of a mile. The way that the road bends, they have tremendous sight distance. We have gotten comments from VDOT that have commented on the acceptability of the sight distance. I'm happy to forward those things to the Planning Commission should they wish to consider that. But I figured I'd throw that in there. When you're at this site, it's one-way traffic on this, you know, on the south side of the road. And you can see a very long way to pull out of you. It's not a blind curve. Tremendous sight distance.
Yeah, I don't have any quarrel with that at all, but, I mean, we're all aware that the reason you're having to do all this earth moving and fill dirt is to get your entrance up to the level of the road. Once that's done, but still, if you go with a use that's permissible on here, that puts you into a different category of entrance, then you're gonna be looking at some things that you probably aren't gonna financially wanna do. And yet you're asking us to give you all of it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, and I think in that respect, it's sort of self-governing, right? Because if he wants to put a motel there, it's gonna have to be a $250,000 entrance.
Right.
If he wants to put the money in, he's gonna go with the plans he's gonna do. He's gonna upgrade it to the level of the use that is going to be within this. I mean, in regards, you know, and I sent an email, I believe, to a few people, you know, saying that maybe some of these things weren't super great, but, like the 814, but, I mean, restricting the use to what he wants to do with the property is what got him back here a year later from the first time, so. I hate to see people hem themselves in, because plans do change, needs change. You know, I think we've beat this up pretty good for tonight.
All right,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. All right, Mr. Haggy, we got two ways to go here. We can ask you if you would be willing to put conditions on this thing, and if you say no, then we go with it. So, would you be willing to put conditions on this thing?
I think so. I mean, there's things there that I would not want to see. I am my
Okay.
own neighbor too. I want to do what's best.
All right.
You know, what's best for the county, what's best for the people. There are some things I want to do there. It's not a fire hall. It's not, you know, I could name
Right.
a whole bunch of those, but.
Very well. Then,
But yeah.
if you would, get with Mr. Nichols and line through those things. How's that?
I will be happy to talk to Mr. Heggie, and I'm sure that we'll see what he would like to come up with and present that at the public hearing.
Any further questions? Thank you,
Just,
sir.
just one, and that's for Mr. Nichols. Does that change anything with the advertisement, or as far as it going to public hearing?
No, we have advertised that we're hearing this case.
And
Much like what happened with the Criglersville Elementary School, the proffers were updated at the hearing.
Yeah, more,
That's okay.
as long as it's more restrictive.
Yep,
essentially.
if the applicant chooses to proffer something between now all the way up to the case, we can do that.
Okay, any further discussion? Thank you, sir, appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
At this point, is there any public comment on this case? No neighbors raising Cain? That's a good thing. All right, thank you. All right, case number SP-01-09-25, Anabaptist Health Share, site plan application, second workshop. Country View Homes has filed a site plan application on behalf of Anabaptist Health Share for a property located on South Seminole Trail and identified as Madison County Tax Map 48-8C. The site is located on the west side of Highway 29, just south of Orange Road. The property contains a total of 3.214 acres and is zoned B1 business. The project, known as Anabaptist Health Share Office, is proposing to construct a new 14,091 square foot office building pursuant to Appendix 1 of zoning, Article 8-1-3. Office buildings are a by right use. 43,554 square feet of earth will be disturbed during construction. Mr. Nichols, anything to add there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Since our last workshop on this particular case, there have been just a couple of small changes. At that time, there was a small discrepancy with the permit for the health department. At one point in time, this particular parcel and the one to the south were one. They were later subdivided. So the health department application stated the southern parcel instead of the northern one here. That has since been corrected, so the health department permit has been straightened out. Beyond that, we had the issue where we had requested the applicant to relocate the easement for the adjoining property. There is an easement for another party that traverses this area. It's illustrated up on the board, and you can see where the easement kicks to the left here and comes on up through where the proposed parking spots are. The applicant has told me they're actively working with the holder of this easement to relocate this 12 feet one way to put it in the aisle instead of through the parking spots. Realistically, access will never be encumbered, but they are working for a legal solution for that, because this is going to be an aisle, a path for cars to travel anyway, and so it will not encumber the access. But they're going to move the easement like we asked them to anyway. My understanding is that has not quite been accomplished yet, and they're working on getting that done before the public hearing. But that may be something that we have to address as we go forward. Beyond that, I think those were the only issues that we had remaining. Otherwise, everything seemed to be in order. There were some questions that I got from some planning commissioners regarding the stormwater on this property. We've looked into this. The stormwater management is governed by the DEQ handbook in Article 19. And this is covered in their erosion and sediment plan, which is provided before you in the submittal here. They do not need a standalone stormwater plan, as they are less than 1 acre is my understanding. So they don't need a separate page for that. I have a letter from Culpeper Soil and Water in your packet that states that they're in compliance with all of those items. And that's all I have for you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Nichols?
Chairman, I have a
Yes.
question. Look at where the stormwater management pond is, and you see where that piece of pipe comes out of the stormwater management pond and goes over to a DI inlet. Okay? Now that DI inlet, the guy that built the mobile home park out there, he put that system in, and that's his catch basin. He owns that. The county or the state does not own that. My question is to Mr. Wright, can you take water from one and discharge water from a pipe onto somebody else's property?
Well, I think that person could consider it a trespass or a nuisance.
Just asking.
I can contribute to this, and that the same water that's there that runs off that property now will still go there. I mean, this property, I'll zoom out a little bit here, is a crest of a hill. This property is a crest of a hill here, and it slopes down towards the property. The reason why they have put the retention pond in here, because the original plan did not have this. And when the calculations were done for the sheet flow, for the water runoff, and pardon me because I don't know all the nomenclature, so I'll probably call something wrong, but as the water runs off this property, the point of this pond here is to catch it and slow down the water. So we're not putting water directly onto the neighbor's property in a concentrated manner that's going to erode it. That's why the pond went in there and why we had to revise the plan from the original one that did not include this.
But that's not the issue. You're taking a piece of pipe and piping water over onto someone else's property. I understand that if you look at the contours of the whole place is bringing the water into the silt trap or the stormwater management pond. But then when you're discharging the water to is onto someone else. I'm just asking if that's legal.
Culpeper Soil and Water says that it's legal.
Well, I'll tell you, I worked up in Northern Virginia, and we got a terrible lawsuit one time for doing that, and that's why I'm asking.
All right, let's bring the applicant in and see if you have an answer for that.
Your concern is very valid. That DI inlet was installed to accept the water from the adjoining property. That was the original intent, because Henchy and Beans did the work for the campground, and so that's why that was done that way.
It's done that way, and you got an easement to do it, I got no problem.
Okay. Does anyone else have a question for Mr. Nichols? If not, we'll see if anyone else has questions for you. Any other questions for the applicant? Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I've got a comment.
Yes, sir, Mike.
And this would probably be more for, Mr. Nichols. So, we talked about that other easement, and you said that was, being modified at this point as it is. Is that something that's gonna hold this up as far as it going to, be approved or disapproved in a week or two? That would be next week, is that correct?
My understanding is that it would be the prerogative of the Board of Supervisors. I will review the ordinance before we get to public hearing, so I can answer that question very specifically. But I believe that in the early parts of the site plan ordinance, the Board of Supervisors has the latitude to approve with conditions as they see fit, or could modify any part of that ordinance.
And I can speak to that too, Mike. We've been in contact with Meta, and they have agreed to change it, that it's a good idea. They have signed their paperwork, and it's supposed to be coming to us currently. But that was one thing that I was going to bring up too. I would hope that it wouldn't hold up the project. It will be done. I could bring email correspondence from the attorney for Anabaptist Health Share, if that would make the Board of Supervisors or this body more comfortable. But there was no restrictions in the deed of easement, and when I usually do them for my construction purposes, I put in there that it can't be any fences or no obstacles, whatever. This one here, there was nothing like that in there. It didn't talk about that you couldn't park on it, that you couldn't do whatever. There was no restrictions put into that deed of easement. So that was our fallback if it's not here by the time that the board brings it forward.
Yeah, that's the reason why I brought that up. And, maybe you wanted to do that homework and get that done beforehand. I personally don't think that it'd probably hold it up, but at the same time, it'd be nice to have that in hand if you had it.
Yes, sir. We are trying hard.
And speaking of the stormwater pond discharge, I had done some looking up on this, and what I had come out with, that in certain particulars, that you would need to have a drainage easement. But apparently, from what I understand from Mr. Sexton, that did not meet the criteria that you would need that. I mean, everything before has been sheet flowed down that hill. And now that you're directing it to one of their DIs to go straight into their own retention pond. That was my question of rather than letting it sheet flow like it always has, and just redirecting it all the way back into their particular stormwater pond. Because I didn't know, had no idea that they have done the calculations on their pond to accept your pond.
Yeah, they did do that because Henchy and Baines did both projects, and so the DI is like an 18-inch, and that was the reason for doing the detention pond, is that outlet is going to be a 12-inch, so that it would never exceed the pipe that it's flowing to.
Okay. So you're gonna have a smaller pond feeding a smaller pipe feeding a larger pipe.
That is correct.
Okay.
I see here where the pipe coming out of your pond going to the DI is a 6-inch.
Or is it a 6? I stand to be correct. I was thinking it was a 12.
The reason I'm asking
Yeah.
the question, it would be better if it was 12, but I'm not an engineer.
Well, I'm not either, to be fair, Pete.
6-inch pipe doesn't take much to stop that.
That's correct. And I couldn't remember. I thought it was a 12. Maybe it is a 6. But basically what they're trying to do, they built the pond big enough to hold water for a few hours and release it slowly as not to flood out the neighbor. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what it is. That was my bad.
Okay, any further question for them? Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you.
Do we have any public comment on this case? No neighbors raising Cain on this one either. Okay, thank you. That's a good thing. Okay, third case tonight, case number SU-02-25-1, Two Rivers special use permit application, first workshop. Is this the first one on this, Alan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I believe so.
Carrie, Gaviria, okay, has applied for a special use permit to operate a primitive campground on a 48.347 acre, according to the GIS, parcel known as Madison County Tax Map 40-95A. The parcel is zoned A1 agricultural. The parcel currently contains a residence that is being utilized as short-term rental and campsites that meet the definition of Madison zoning ordinance, Article 20-31. Anything to add there, Mr. Nichols?
Not a whole lot, Mr. Chairman. This one came to us, a citizen made a comment about the campground being there and inquired as to whether or not they had a permit. I followed up with the applicant, and they stated that they, when they were starting this business, had gone through what they felt was all the appropriate measures. They'd been to see the Commissioner of Revenue, they'd been to the Health Department, and the disconnect on this one was the Health Department requires a campground permit when you reach 3 or more campsites. They have 2 here. Our ordinance states that any campground in exchange for compensation requires a special use permit. The applicant was very nice, very amenable into coming in. We had a good discussion at PDRC. At that time, VDOT stated that the amount of traffic did not require any changes. They were very comfortable with that. The only real outstanding issue with this one is the Health Department did not give us a firm answer. The campground is currently utilizing a porta potty for a bathroom, and there was some debate whether that was acceptable as a long-term solution or not. I have reached out to the Health Department and asked for their comment regarding this. They'll consider it, and I'm quite sure that they will give us their comments as we approach the public hearing on this matter. It is worth noting that the campground at Hoover Ridge utilizes a porta potty, so I don't think that we're going to run into too much trouble there. But beyond that, this one seems very straightforward. If you go through the literature that the applicant provided, you'll be able to see 2 platforms there. The platforms are permitted through the building department. They have all their necessary things. They were simply missing the special use permit that the zoning ordinance requires. But otherwise, everything seems to be in order.
Okay, thank you. And just to make sure this is clear, this is 2 campsites.
This is
Just
2
2.
campsites.
Okay. And Health Department doesn't think they're involved unless there's 3.
The Health Department does not require a campground permit until there's 3, but they are involved in every use of water and sewer.
Okay. Water and sewer disposal on the property, none. So that
They're using a porta potty, they're getting it pumped
porta
out.
potty, and there's no water supply other than bottled water or whatever.
Whatever you carry in, it's camping. Or you can take it from the river and pump it through your filter.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Nichols? Okay, no questions then. Is the applicant here? Would you like to address the planning commission, maybe answer any questions? Identify yourself, please, and
So my name is Jason Gaviria. I'm the husband of Carrie Gaviria. This is our son Riker and our other son Crew.
okay. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Gaviria? I'm getting closer anyway.
I'll just have a question and even a comment to the panel here. Y'all are mentioned the last time at the PRDC that you're moving on site permanently. Is that still accurate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we plan on moving in. There's a rental that's mentioned in this. We plan on moving into that rental.
And I note that too. Some people have had concerns if the owner isn't on property with some of these campsites or Airbnb. So I think that's a good one to be. That's all I have.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I've got one, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mike, go ahead and we'll catch up on Pete.
So I just wanted to know if they want to, and this is kind of almost redirected to Mr. Nichols, because I'm having a little trouble thumbing through my paperwork here. How many can they have on this piece of property? And if they can have more, should they maybe want to go ahead and ask for this now with a special use permit?
While the applicant has not expressed any interest in expanding beyond this, if you give me just a moment here, I'm going to tell you how many. It's quantified in sites per acre, so they could have quite a few if they wanted to. But give me just a minute, I'll tell you in just a second.
Yeah, I thought they probably could, and I'm just suggesting that maybe if they just want to do two, that's fine, but maybe they want to go ahead and look ahead at this particular point, and maybe ask for one or two more. I mean, that's certainly up to them. That's just my suggestion.
I was gonna say, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah.
We're not looking to expand any
Okay.
further past
Yeah,
that.
I think that was the answer at the PDRC meeting as well. Pete, did you have a question?
Mr. Schneider, I'll answer yours really quick, was to say that they cannot exceed 20 sites per acre.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
A quick elaboration. So part of this is kind of a life skill that me and my wife, it's important to us that we kind of have our children kind of learn and almost manage it as if they were business owners. So a lot of this, again, it's just a carry-in campsite. It's more so just tidy up, take care, and learn how the process works. So we don't plan on expanding it to anything grand.
Pete, did you have a question?
Yeah, if the health department approves you to use a porta john, you have a wash station with that porta john,
No, it's a temporary porta-john.
but if you get a temporary wash station, I think if the health department approves a porta john and you're letting the public use it, you have to have a wash, hand station there beside it.
I'm quite sure that the applicant will follow whatever directions the health department gives them.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any public comment on this? No public comment. Okay. Next case is case number SU-02-25-2, Black Cat Antiques, special use permit application. This is the first workshop. Carrie Angie Brown has applied for a special use permit to operate an antique craft and gift shop in accordance with Madison County zoning ordinance 3-2-5 and an auction establishment in accordance with Madison County zoning ordinance 4-2-23 for a 36.77 acre by the GIS parcel known as Madison County Tax Map 45-21. The parcel is zoned A1 agricultural. Mr. Nichols, anything to add there?
Yes,
Before we start,
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna excuse myself from this case because I had the same business.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The applicant's representative approached me some time ago to start talking about this facility. This is the former Roaring Twenties Antique Car Museum that's on Wolftown Hood Road that most of us have no doubt noticed over time. The car museum has since closed, and the owner of the property sought a new tenant. The applicant would like to have an antique store in there that's very similar to other antique stores around, which they would have booths that they would lease to other people. The nature of their auction activity, they previously stated, will be restricted to online auctions, and they would stagger pickup dates in order to not exceed the capacity of their entrance. They have already met with our county building official, and he has made comments for minimal changes to the building to bring them up to today's standards. Those things are very achievable. I can get a list of those, should you choose to see them, but I understand them to be very minor. They're having the septic system evaluated, and they've already met with a representative from VDOT who specified a few minor changes to their entrance, mostly relegated around trimming some bushes for sightline and adding some new gravel. This seems pretty straightforward, and the applicant has certainly been doing all of their due diligence ahead of time on this one.
Okay, thank you. Any question for Mr. Nichols? If I remember correctly from the PDRC, am I saying that one right? Their auction activity is primarily online, is that correct?
Correct. The applicant has stated that they are not interested in hosting in-person auctions. And so, depending on how your discussion goes with the applicant this evening, this is a special use permit, you certainly may develop conditions with them. It may be reasonable, because of their entrance, to restrict their online activity to online only. But certainly, discuss that with them. We don't want to preclude them from doing something that they may otherwise want to do, but that may be a good spot to start if you saw conditions as being fitting.
Yeah, I was mainly asking the question in terms of potential parking situations if you actually had on-site auctions there. If I understood from what they told us at the preliminary development thing, their traffic primarily from their auctions would be people coming in a few at a time to pick up items.
Sure, I'm sure they would have a several-day range in which people would drop by, as they saw fit to pick things up like any other location.
In terms of the antique and craft shop, well, I'll ask the applicant when we get to that point. Any question for Mr. Nichols? Any other questions?
One.
Yes.
What is the capacity of the parking lot? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know, but I can get that answer for you.
You'll probably get to
I do have a question, Mr. Nichols, and this is, refresh my memory, I should remember it, but this application is staying with the applicant, not the landowner, is that correct?
I think that we can establish that. Let me take a peek really quick, but if memory serves, I did think that this was an indefinite application, but I could be wrong.
I could be as well.
I don't think that we addressed that particular issue. We should ask the applicants their intent. While their applicants are tenants in this property, we may reach out to Ms. Dudley and see what her intent is as the property owner, if she would want this to be with the applicant or run with the land. But we could definitely do that before our next workshop.
Good point, yes. Other questions for Mr. Nichols? Okay, thank you. If the applicant would come up and identify yourself and prepare to answer some questions.
I'm Angie Brown.
Okay. Do you have any preliminary comments or just want to answer questions?
Yes, I can just answer.
Okay. Well, to the first question that I had then. In the PDRC meeting, if I understood correctly, you were talking about basically renting spaces for craft shops and things like that. You're not going to run the whole building yourself as an antique and craft store, were you?
That's correct. We will have vendors for antiques
Yes,
and also
vendors, yeah.
crafts and gifts.
So what we're looking at is the online auction, potentially delivering some of those items a few at a time, and at least right now, and vendors renting spaces in the building.
Yes, but the online auction is something we're not prepared to do right away. It's just an idea of something we'd like to add in the future.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? It'd be kind of nice to see something in this building again.
Nice building.
One question, and there are several outbuildings there as well. Will this business take place just in the one large building, the old?
Just in the main
just-
building.
okay. And will there be any, I mean, you talk about the vendors or anything, nothing else will occur that's a transactional exchange in any of the other buildings at all? That's-
No.
okay.
Okay, and not actually a question, but kind of a comment. You are not the owner, is that correct?
That's
You are-
correct. I'm
You
not.
are leasing or planning to lease the property, okay. Since the application is in your name, that would almost automatically mean it would have to be the applicant only.
They're acting as the agent of the owner. The application has the owner's signature on it, and I did meet the owner, and so this is, she has okayed this.
All right, so that's still simply a question that we need to clarify before moving forward, okay.
Which specific question are we clarifying?
The type of
Oh.
special use permit, whether it's.
Yes, that's, I'll
whether it
clean,
goes
I'll
with the
clean that up.
property, yeah, okay.
Mr. Chairman, another
Yes, sir.
question for Mr. Nichols probably, and I'm not saying we're going there, but with the other outbuildings, and there's quite a bit of land on the other side of the road as well, can a parcel carry two special use permits? I'm sure this is going to be successful, and I hope it's successful. But let's say it is, and we want to expand or do something on the other side of the road or another building. Can we carry multiple SUPs on a single
I don't see why
property?
not.
Okay.
You issue them for particular activities. There are many parcels that carry multiple activities.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Just wanted to
there's a lot of
clarify.
farms around that have a special use permit for one corner of it doing something. You've got one use and then a permit. You could add another special use permit as long as you met all the criteria and enough acreage for density requirements. Sure.
Also, Mr. Whitman, if it's a similar use, then it may make sense just to come back and amend this special use permit and expand it.
Okay. But I bring it up mainly since if this is the lessee, not the owner, if the owner has, is approached by another business to expand on there, just so we're not tying that individual up with just
I don't
the
think you're
lessee.
tying them down. You could hear another one. There's like 50 acres out there.
Yeah, there's certainly enough,
Case dependent.
well, there's certainly enough land area there in A1 for more than one use, so,
Yeah, they got plenty of acreage.
yeah. Any other question for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
would just state on that, I think we'll, not our case by case, but we'll just need to look to see if there's precedent that establishes that, but certainly the owner could speak for the property. So it does not hurt to check with the owner.
Okay. Any other question, comment? Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Any public comment on this case?
I just want an antique truck if you got one.
You missed your chance. They were there 25 years ago. They were all sold, yeah. Or maybe it was 50 years ago. I lose track. but- All right. Okay, next case. Case number RZ-02-25-2, AC Limited Partnership rezoning application. This is the second workshop. Kerry Brown has applied on behalf of AC Limited Partnership to rezone a 2.136 acre parcel known as Madison County Tax Map 55-38B from A1 agricultural to B1 business. No project is currently planned for the parcel. Mr. Nichols, anything to add?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This parcel right along Highway 29 here, the applicant came to me and they just expressed an interest to rezone it from a value standpoint. So there's nothing in particular that we need to unpack as far as the site plan goes. At PDRC for this one, the health department didn't have any comment because there's no proposed construction or use at this time. VDOT did encourage the applicant to reach out to their neighbor. I'll pull up the Google Maps here in a minute, but this property here that's adjacent to the southwest has a deceleration lane, and it runs right up to the edge of the property. So Mr. John Wynn with VDOT encouraged them to reach out to see about getting an easement for access while utilizing that deceleration lane. Nobody's going to force, the owner to the south there to grant them an easement, of course, but we were looking for some cooperation there to try to make the entrance needs easier, as that's always a concern. But beyond that, with no project proposed, the question is simple. Is this particular parcel of land appropriate for the B1 uses?
Okay, questions for Mr. Nichols? Just one quick clarification. The road frontage there it was what, 300 feet, if I remember correctly? And we are on about 29. And while it's true that we can't say somebody can't access their property, our ordinances basically say that there should be 900 feet between entrances off of 29.
While that's ideal,
Yeah.
I seem to recall that we cannot deny somebody an entrance to their property if they need one. Where that entrance goes and how it's developed is at VDOT's purview. Of course, they will specify all that, but I don't think you can be precluded from entering your property, if I recall that correctly. All right, let's see here.
Any further questions for Mr. Nichols?
I wasn't super clear on that when we ran into that the last time as far as the entrances coming into 29. And I understand, there's a difference between the county's ordinance and the VDOT's regulations, which probably, I'm assuming VDOT probably doesn't have the same entrance regulation spacing. But I'm not sure where that 900 feet really comes into play if we can't, if it's, seemingly not enforceable.
Right.
For that particular ordinance, we should unpack that one at a later date. But I would like to do that, but we should do it at a later date.
Yeah, along the same lines, there are also, I think it's in the same ordinance, there are regulations about distances from intersections as well on 29. I would have to ask how far that is from that entrance.
We'll do some digging on that one.
Yeah.
But GIS says 339 feet is the entire frontage on 29. I mean, plus or minus, whatever. But much like our previous case tonight, the question for this application is really not to unpack the entrance, but is this an appropriate, place for B1? I will say that with small parcels that are B1 like this, that are clustered around other ones, I think that the county should consider that the real possibility here is that, okay, so you've got a vacant parcel, you rezone it B1, there's other B1 scattered around. Who knows what may come to pass? Somebody could come and buy multiple parcels and assemble them as a, B1 district, which essentially, is being created here with these that are coming together. And then you would end up with, just enough land for somebody to do a bigger project to supplement that down the road. So just because we rezone a parcel B1 doesn't mean that, a use would be restricted to that one site. It happens all the time where developers buy multiple sites and then they assemble across them. So something for your consideration.
Any other questions for Mr. Nichols? All right, would the applicant like to address the planning commission? And if you would identify yourself, and we'll go from there.
Hi, can I take this? I am Carrie Brown. I'm the realtor working on behalf of AC Limited. Jean Clore came to me about this parcel, and she was asking me whether I thought B1 would be a good idea for this parcel. I feel like the highest and best use for this parcel is B1. Just considering that, there is several B1s around it. The adjoining property is B1. So, so we're trying to get this rezoned. Any questions?
Okay, any questions for the applicant? No questions? Yeah, I think the concerns that I've voiced were brought up at the PDRC meeting as well, and they're, you know, although it doesn't really affect our determination about whether it's appropriate for B1, it is appropriate, I guess, for us to say that there may be access issues there on 29. Any question for the applicant? Okay, thank you then.
I guess I got
Yes,
one.
okay.
This is where the detention pond was built by the state where the old White House used to be,
It's just south of it.
just south of it.
Yes, it's not the adjoining parcel, but it's on the other side of that adjoining parcel.
But it is very close to that new intersection that they've just finished, yes.
Mr. Elliott, our subject parcel, if we look up on the screen, is the one here adjacent to the other B1, and the one you're speaking of with the retention pond is up here where this house used to be.
Which looks like it's roughly, what, 700 or 800 feet at most, so it's, yeah. And then the intersection is right there where the other B1 properties are.
It's a good guess, so about 700 feet.
Yeah, they haven't shown the new intersection there, though.
Not yet.
Okay. Any other question, comment? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. All right, any public comment on this case? No public comment. Everybody wants to go home tonight, okay. Case number SD-02-25-1, subdivision of Madison County Tax Map 42-33. This is the second workshop. Walter Samsel has applied on behalf of Mark A. Morstein to subdivide the parcel identified as Madison County Tax Map 42-33. The parcel is currently 28.5947 acres according to survey, and is proposed to be divided to create 3 new parcels plus the residual. Anything to add there, Mr. Nichols?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So just quick point of order. This is the first workshop
Yeah.
for this applicant. I'll get here eventually. Here we go. All right, so first time that we've seen this particular subdivision. It seems to meet all of the appropriate ordinances for lot width, site size. It's in excess of what is needed. The applicant did come with their application with all the OSC work being completed. It has been submitted to the Health Department and is under review. They also have a draft of a road maintenance agreement. At least one of these lots is sharing an entrance here over a very small portion in order to limit the number of entrances along Beamtown Road. That is in, the template is in your packet. We have already heard back from VDOT on this particular subdivision, and they found the plan generally acceptable. So this one seems pretty straightforward. Our applicant is here tonight. I'm sure they'll be happy to speak to you.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Nichols before we move to the applicant? No questions. All right, is the applicant here? Yes, sir. If you would identify yourself and.
Good evening. My name is Mark Morstein. I'm the owner of the property. Just by way of history, I bought the property in the late, sometime in the 1980s. I can't quite remember, to be honest with you. And we used it, I have kids, and we used it for recreation and hiking and just enjoying the property. But I'm now retired, and we're trying to figure out what to do with it. And I had a financial advisor who said to me, I think it's time for you to do this before you kick off. So that's why I'm doing it. But in any case, we've tried to make it as straightforward as we can. About 10 years ago, I granted an easement to a woman named Charlotte Charlotte Jackson. You can see that on the left side of the plat for her access. And we retained an easement, a non-exclusive easement for access off of Lot 1. And I believe, and Mr. Samsel is here, and he talked to VDOT, but as I understand it, VDOT has approved, or appears to approve the access and so forth. So I think we've tried to do everything as straightforward as we possibly can, and not compact this thing with more lots and just limit it to the 4 lots that are there. So, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. All of these lots appear to be fronting on Beamtown Road, is that correct?
Yes, yes, they all are, I think, and that was, we wanted to do that so that there wouldn't be any internal roads. And the access, I think you can see the access on Lot 1 will probably be off of that easement that goes to the property. And as I understand it, there's already an access approval for that easement. And in one of the exhibits, there's already been a road maintenance agreement agreed on that particular easement.
Okay, the road maintenance agreement is for
Right.
that lot.
Yeah, and that was done in, I think, 2014, I believe. I think one of the documents you have shows that it was done by Cole Purrier. He was the attorney at that time.
So that one has a road maintenance agreement because of that easement.
Correct.
The other 3 are going to have entrances on Beamtown Road?
Correct.
Okay.
So there'll be one additional maintenance easement between the lot 2 and 3, which I think I've attached to, the.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions for the applicant? It's pretty straightforward. Any questions at all?
Is this property where the old Means property?
Yes. 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 In fact, if you look right at the right side of Lot 3, right at the bottom, you'll see the old Beam Cemetery. There's a small cemetery right there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir. Okay. Appreciate it. All right, if there are no further questions for the applicant, is there any public comment? Thank you. All right, that being the case, next case is case number 2024-ZOA-12-18-02, adoption of a personal campground definition. Since this is not.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Did I-
one case ahead.
One more case?
Mr. Jonathan Nichols.
Oh, sorry, on the wrong page. Mr. Jonathan Nichols, okay. Case RZ-02-25-1, Jonathan Nichols, rezoning First Workshop. Jonathan Nichols has applied to rezone a 5.532 acre portion of a parcel known as Madison County Tax Map 44-3. Total acreage is 77.112 per survey. The C1 conservation to A1 agricultural. If rezoning is approved, the applicant intends to subdivide the property. Okay, anything to add there, Mr. Nichols?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is illustrated on the screen here. This parcel is split zoned. The elevation increases as you go to the north there, and so I suspect that's how that came to be. It's bifurcated by the road. There's a portion here that sticks out to the east. If we look at this on the survey that's down here, this is the portion in question that would get rezoned from conservation to agricultural. The applicant stated they intend to do this because at some point they would like to subdivide this parcel off. In the conservation district, the minimum size is 10 acres. In the agricultural district, it's 3. So by rezoning this portion to agricultural, subdividing this particular piece becomes a possibility. Everyone always likes to ask about rollback taxes. I have asked the Commissioner of Revenue about this. It would qualify for the land use program, you know, being adjacent to the existing parcel if it were A1. I don't think it's going to matter for long, though, because the subdivision of this parcel would trigger a rollback anyway, regardless of how it's zoned. So, but that's a matter for the applicant to take up with the Commissioner of Revenue. But beyond that, this zoning and map amendment is essentially for the purpose of this future subdivision.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Nichols? All right, so a large part of this has steep terrain, is that correct? And then the area that's being asked to rezone is
I
flat.
would encourage you to ask the
Yeah,
applicant to describe his property.
Any other questions for Mr. Nichols? Okay, in that case, if the applicant would like to address us, and if you would please identify yourself, and we'll go from there.
Jonathan Nichols, not
The
Nichols.
microphone over here, please. No relation, right?
No relation.
He stutters when he spells his name.
Yeah.
It's Nichols. So I'm Jonathan Nichols. This is my son Xavier. He has enjoyed the whole long meeting. He asked if next time we could be first. But this 5 acres is sitting off to the right side. It was all part of almost 1,000-acre family farm that's been divided, you know, over the past couple hundred years. And this piece is kind of like, I mean, it's weird. You can, on the part below, there's a driveway that is an easement on the survey. If you go, like right there on the left side is a driveway that is an easement across my land back to the Breeden 78 acres. So this property lays right on the right side of the driveway. It has its own entrance already to VDOT. The very right corner of this is a rock that's probably 40 feet in the air. I mean, you know what I mean? It's not, you can put probably a couple 1,000 square foot house on the top and that's it. The left corner of it where all that squiggly lines is rocks. You can't build there. It's literally a solid stone that's probably 2 stories tall. So it's kind of a limited piece. And then if you cross the driveway over there, it's about a 40-foot, 50-foot rock face right there too. And then that whole front road of mine, I mean, I don't know, it's probably 30, 40 feet off the ground. And then it goes up to an absolute steep cliff to where it leads into that, whatever it is back there, that campground. And then the back left of my property is steep woods that it's hard to walk on. So it's very rolling. This is not flat at all. And I think when they did the conservation, because we're so close to the National Forest, they just decided to draw it along the road, you know what I mean? Because it's all been agriculture. We do hay on it. We have animals on it. It's been agriculture its whole life. It's not been conservation. So I'm just asking if we can do that 5 into A1, because my sister-in-law and brother-in-law would like to build there, but you know what I mean? That's why.
Yeah, the conservation zone is basically topographical in nature, and as you've explained,
Yeah.
it's pretty much like that. So.
Yeah.
And this is relatively buildable flat in some places.
Oh, it's a beautiful spot
Okay.
on top there. Like it is, I mean, the top is beautiful. The driveway's gonna be fun in the winter, but
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm not driving up it.
All right, does anyone have any questions for the applicant? And basically, it's just this one, you would be subdividing this one piece off.
Well, to
of
be
the-
honest with you, I'd like it all A1, but because of y'all's fees, it cost me almost 80 grand to change this from C, which is ridiculous. It would cost me to do all my land almost 80 grand to change it from conservation to A1, which is crazy because the fee schedule. So I'm just doing this 5 because I can't afford to get all my land to A1.
Okay, any question? All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any public comment? All the public's gone, okay. All right, thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've got a question here. Is there any way that this is part of a conservation easement? This is doesn't have to be necessarily for the applicant, but just a question.
It's just, yeah, it's just the zoning is conservation, yeah.
I understand.
Okay. Okay. So the answer is no, it's not conservation easement. Thank you. Any further questions? All right, and no public comment on this. Thanks. Okay, make sure I'm on the right side of the page this time. Yes. All right, case number 2024 ZOA-12-18-02, adoption of personal campground definition. Third workshop on this. The adoption of a definition for a personal campground is being proposed to allow for by right recreation on private property, but regulate the use of recreational vehicles or RVs and tents to prevent their use as permanent residences. Alan, want to update us on that, please?
This is simply a continuation of the discussion that we've had previously that came to us because a gentleman was using his land to put RVs on that he owned, not for compensation. And at that time, the Planning Commission and the board members that were here expressed an interest in simply allowing that activity as regulation, or as recreation, pardon me, but that there should be some language in regulating that to make sure that people could use their land for camping, but that we were going to preclude commercial activity because that would bring you under Article 15 and 15A of the zoning ordinance. So this is where we left off last time.
Okay, and I see you've answered the question about R1 use as well here. Okay, any questions for Mr. Nichols?
Mr. Chairman, I do.
Yes, sir, Mike.
I had sent an email to Mr. Nichols asking, I'm not sure that I got a response on this, but I did get one from Alan, but I don't know if I got this particular thing answered. Are we getting too far into a definition with this? And so should this be split into a definition at some point, and then the remainder of this go into an ordinance? Because it seems to be, if we're just doing a definition at this particular point, it's a rather lengthy definition and goes rather far, rather than breaking some of this off into a future, which would be a nearly future ordinance.
If I may comment?
Yes, sir. And
It would
maybe
be easy to say a personal campground, use the first few sentences and essentially, say that not for compensation, not to exceed 30 days, and stop at, and I think this is what Mr. Schneider had suggested earlier. Mike, I did respond to you, so check out your email there. Mr. Schneider had a reasonable point where you stopped after the every 5 acres of property. So essentially, it would read, an area of land developed by the owner to accommodate friends and family, not in exchange for rent, lease, or otherwise for compensation, not to exceed 30 consecutive days, in tents, campers, RVs, travel trailers, designed for single families, Personal campgrounds must comply with regulations for sanitation imposed by the Madison Health Department. Maximum of 2 RV pads, pad sites with hookups for every 5 acres of property. And then just stop, was what Mr. Snyder's proposing. And then you could have a Article 15C, which would outline the dimensions of the campsites, specify, there, you could amend the by right uses for C1 and A1 to include personal campground and those things. So you could do it in 2 steps instead of just putting it all in a definition, which may provide some clarity to people looking for uses as they go down the list of by right and special permit uses, that personal camping is allowed in A1, C1, and on parcels larger than 10 acres in A1, however you wanted to word it beyond that.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, Mr. Nichols, I think whenever we get to these definitions and these ones that will probably be ordinances, I mean, whatever, in my opinion, always, whatever gives y'all teeth, you and Mr. Weekly and Mr. Hannon, so whatever y'all feel gives you the most teeth to go. I mean, I think that's the approach, right? If it is violated, you'll have the correct.
We've got some pretty long definitions in the ordinance. Boundary line adjustment is one of them, and all that's handled in a definition. But, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with it being an extensive and clear definition. The way it is now would give me enforcement tools to be able to, if somebody is residing in their tent or RV, it's one other avenue to, for enforcement on that, or as a precursor to getting somebody in here for an SUP, in which case you get to put reasonable conditions on somebody. You make sure that the Commissioner of Revenue is doing his thing, and, all the usual stuff that we like to see with SUPs, while still maintaining that, hey, if I've got my tent set up here, let's say for the weekend, or I bring my RV up here during hunting season, your ordinance says I can do that, and no one's going to give them a hard time about it. Because where we are right now, it's not addressed at all.
Okay. Personally, and when you bring up the boundary line adjustment, I think that's one of our most recent things that we worked on. I think what you have here, you want to be really, really specific in everything you say in the definition. And then it doesn't hurt to duplicate when you say as a by right use in A1 and C1 and R1, personal campground, you can say an area of land developed if you want to, or you can simply say personal campground as per definition. And then you've got everything there in place. Essentially, that's what we ended up doing on the boundary line adjustment.
Bring up the ordinances. I got them right here.
Where we made the use
Chairman?
statement. It was very simple.
Yeah, I think maybe if Mr. Nichols doesn't mind bringing up, for example, if you go to section C1 in the zoning ordinance, and it just sort of lists them, like the last one is these are by right uses in C1, 3-1-22. It says short-term lodging unit, and then it says C20- whatever for definitions.
Right, exactly.
So I think we could just add this as 3-1-23 or whatever, if that's what we get, way to go. Mr. Snyder, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I can't bring it up. I think I had it was a 15-2-B or something, but I can't bring what I have written up and watch the screen at the same time. I've got some verbiage and some other thoughts on this that I just can't do at the same time. I'll be glad to share them with you after, at some point during the week, I'll put an email together and send it out. I missed that.
It's just as well.
Basically, this is still a work in progress, and I guess our main point here at this point, is there anything additional we would like to see in this?
I would like Mr. Smith's comments on the R1
Yep.
aspect of this, because he had opinions in the last time that I think were valuable.
The R1, yeah.
Sure. I just had more of a rhetorical question. Why not in R1? Because we do have some rather large R1 zoned lots.
When we talked about this originally, I think the point was that, do you want by right camping? Because R1, you go as small as 1.5 acre lots. There's a number of them around, and there's a ton of 3 acre lots. Is it okay to camp on a 3 acre lot? Probably.
Not under
We
this
could-
definition.
Not under this definition, you're right. But do we need to amend that? I'm open to discussion.
My personal thought on this, but they would need to abide by the same regulations if we're going to do this as the A1 and C1. That's my personal thought. I mean, I'm certainly glad to see R1 be part of this, but I don't think they should be held to any less standard than an A1, personally.
I mean, you
I
don't
would-
have to
I would
cite
agree with
districts.
that, I think.
You don't have to cite districts either. You can leave districts off of it. Here's a personal campground. This is what it is, and you just leave the districts out of it, and then we'll deal with that when we get there.
I would agree with that.
I think that's cleaner.
Sorry. What would that mean if it's just a definition and it doesn't say where you can do it? I mean, isn't it just a definition without a
Right.
home? Or is it just saying by right in all districts?
If it's
just says
gonna
what it
be-
is.
If it's gonna be a by right use, it has to be listed.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, well, that's the way the ordinances are done. If it's not listed, it's not allowed. So we.
That's why I kind of wanted a definition, and then we go into a somewhat small ordinance to clean all that up. That was my thought.
Well, actually, all we have to do is add or amend the existing one and add that one more by right use.
I mean, we already have density requirements per
Yeah.
uses. It's probably reasonable just to include the, much like, I'll pull it up again so we're all on the same page. Much like the 3-1-22, short-term lodging unit, see Article 20-160A definitions. So you're going to make the definition, and while the definition may not cite specific districts, we would then modify conservation, agricultural, R1, to then add those to the list of by right uses. So you would just refer to the definition, because 10 acres per use in conservation, 3 acres per use in agriculture, 1.5 minimum for R1. The only difference really is that I don't believe that the campgrounds are allowed, the commercial campgrounds, travel trailer or primitive, are allowed in A1, if I recall correctly. I think that was part of the hitch. And so part of the reason we were doing this more extensively to define the sizes of sites and those things were so if we caught somebody doing commercial activity, it was easier to get them an SUP because they already had sites that size.
Yeah, you've already got, you've got a maximum number of pad sites per 5 acres. And you've got spacing requirements, number of square feet requirements. So you may not, in your R1, I'm not sure you need to make the 10 acres. If somebody wants to have an R1 that's 1.5 acres and they want to put a tent in the backyard.
I mean, the easy fix is just to remove the 10-acre requirement from R1 and leave the rest alone.
Yeah, and that way we wouldn't. Let's see. Now, if we put a by right in conservation, that automatically applies to ag. I don't remember if it applies to R1 or not. I don't think it does. So we would simply have to put it in 2 places, and that would take care of it for, as far as putting it in the ordinance.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
And
It would go in conservation
Right,
because A1 has all those rights.
right.
And it would go in R1.
Put it specifically in R1, yeah.
And then, let me just, if we put R1 listed and little Billy wants to go in the backyard and camp, is he then illegal? I mean,
No.
I'm never going to give little Billy an NOV. Indeed. Also, there are provisions in our ordinance already that say that we can never charge Boy Scouts for camping and those kind of things. That's in there as a part of this as well.
And I think
They
if
no longer
Little Billy's
exist.
just set up a tent, I think there's a state code provision that says no locality can regulate that.
Nor do we want to. Yeah. I think it's got pretty much everything it needs in it right now. Does anybody see anything that you would like added? Take the 10 acres out and then go with it like that? No comments.
Do we have a general consensus just to strike the acreage requirement for R1 and leave it alone? All right, unless y'all tell me otherwise, I'm going to strike it and bring it back to you.
I personally think that if you are gonna make an A1 have an acreage requirement, which would be more qualifying for a campground of such, that you probably should do the same with R1. That's my personal feeling.
I think that we planned on striking it from A1 and just putting in C, because A1 would be entitled to it.
Did I say A1 or R1?
A1.
Sorry, I meant R1.
Actually,
We have made this super complicated for not a real problem.
yeah.
What is
No.
the simplest way to get this going through? Because, I mean,
The simplest way I see it now is keep what we have now, strike the 10-acre requirement for R1 and let it fly.
Yeah, actually, the whole last sentence can go,
Okay,
because you'll say that when you say R1 by right, personal campground.
okay,
Last two sentences then, right?
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the by right on those two spots and we'll call it a day.
And then your definition contains all the information needed to what's qualified, what the requirements are, et cetera, which is what it should be, I think.
Got it. So if we remove the last two sentences there, are you comfortable going to a public hearing on it? Are you ready to make a recommendation?
All right. One more question. Anybody see anything you want to add, change, or modify?
We're going to get one more workshop on it. I did not advertise this one for a public hearing for this coming one. So if you want to add anything, you got one more chance. And I'll advertise for public hearing this week, so it'll show up in April.
Sounds like we're good.
All right.
Okay. No disagreements. Thank you. Very good. All right, now, okay. Yeah, we might make it in 2 hours.
Not so bad.
Not so bad, no. All right. Continuing discussion, comprehensive plan, anything you want to mention there? Or am I on the wrong page again? No, I'm on the right page, okay.
At the last designated meeting for the comprehensive plan, the planning commission seemed to have rested. I left it on there as a placeholder, should anybody have anything they'd like to address with me. And so otherwise, we're going to hear this in a joint workshop after the next joint meeting coming up next week.
Good.
All right.
Any disagreement with that? Have you been getting all the comments from Fayuts?
I got them all at once. Apparently
once.
Microsoft quarantined them.
Yeah, yeah, I noticed
So,
that.
yeah, so I just got them the other day. I'll go through them and check them out.
Okay. All right, you want to go quickly through our informational and correspondence?
I'm so happy to do that for you, Mr. Chairman. So upcoming next week, we've got two public hearings. We've got Mr. Hagee's public hearing. And again, if you guys have any questions on those things or want to see documentation from anybody, please let me know and I will forward you all the ENS and VDOT stuff you want to read. Beyond that, we've got Anabaptist Health Share is up for their public hearing. And then we will do the the joint workshop afterwards for comprehensive plan with the Board of Supervisors. In the following workshop for March, we will be doing Jonathan Nichols' second workshop. We'll do the Two Rivers Campground second workshop, Black Cat Antique second workshop, AC Limited Partnership second workshop, the subdivision second workshop, and well, I'll keep a placeholder here for adoption of personal campground to show you the final version, and you can give comments. Those are the up-and-coming things now. I have two cases that are primed for PDRC that Mr. Whitman and I will review tomorrow. One of them is a good one. And so we'll unpack those for you when we come back to the next workshop. The other item that I have for the Planning Commission to consider is we would like to consider moving to a 100% digital packet. If you'll notice, you have a tremendous amount of paper in front of you tonight. 85% of that's going to be right here after you all leave. We're going to pick it up and throw it in the trash can. Mr. Weekly, let's say Nye and Mr. Carpenter spoke about this at our last agenda review meeting. We feel the timing is appropriate to go digital as we're getting more and more of these cases coming through. I did talk to IT about acquiring either simple Chromebooks, and it has come to pass that an iPad is the 10th gen standard iPad is about the same cost. It's almost identical to a Chromebook, whether you wanted a laptop style or an iPad if necessary. I know a lot of you use your own devices. It's totally fine. The county may provide you a device if you need one, but we have an interest in moving away from paper.
Good. I'm all in favor of more cost-effective methods than this. I mean, in addition to the paper, you've got to consider the time that this consumes for the staff. to do
Jonathan,
this.
I need to see some numbers on how many trees we would save and the savings for
go.
the county then.
We'll
And
talk
how
to our
many-
co-echo rep of our.
How many
copy.
man-hours we'll save?
I would just add to that, it's not trying to impede on your right or anything like that. I believe, Mr. Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, the goal or the preference I think you had mentioned is we'll make these available. If you want to leave them here and we reload these things in prep of your meeting to where you have everything on it, we can do that. They can be issued to you to take to and from. It's whatever you prefer, but we'd be happy to load all. It's much easier for staff to load all those laptops, have it ready to go, have it up here, or if you want to take them with you, that's fine too. So that is what we discussed, and we are pursuing those. I guess it's Apple product now, so.
Yeah. Do you happen to know the screen size on that? You know, old eyes need.
I do not.
Just-
I mean, I know what my eyes
Right.
are looking at, so I don't know. iPads are generally smaller than this. Hold up the, what you have, Janet. It's probably comparable to that. I think that is an iPad we use for sound management, as well, so. If there's something else more preferable and bigger resolution, let us know. We're not trying to be difficult. It is trying to make things easier, for access and cut down on printing if we can.
Yeah, I think we would still print, just like we have tonight, when you have a site plan and need to see something or a large subdivision, I think that's helpful to be able to draw on it. But for most of what we do, we're printing a lot.
Everything else we can download from the agenda.
Yeah, the packets will be exactly like they are now. So, and we've started bookmarking them when we have lots of cases, so you can skip through in the bookmarks, and I'm trying to make it easier for you.
Yeah, we just wouldn't need reams of paper every night when we have a meeting.
And ink.
And the time to collate all that stuff and staple it and hand it out, yeah.
For tonight's packet, how many hours you got in tonight's packet? Over 2 days.
Does anybody else have a prejudice against Apple products?
Yeah,
I do. Okay, that's two of us that have a prejudice against Apple products.
We can address,
Doesn't know how to use them.
we can address a specific device later, but I would
Yeah.
like you to kind of wrap your brain around, is that an okay thing that you would be accepting of moving to digital?
That's what I do.
I mean, we've got,
What I do
what,
now, always have.
at least 4 people that use them already all the time, so.
Okay.
Me personally, I have like tablets coming out of every, laundry basket I grab clothes from, but, yeah, I mean, I'm a Wi-Fi password away. You can stop printing a packet for me. Like you said, and I was gonna mention that, some of the larger site plans and stuff like that's pretty
Yeah.
cumbersome to look at on the computer.
That's
but-
easy if it's just that. But we had
but-
130 pages tonight.
Yep, I'm all for it.
Okay,
I'll bring it, Wi-Fi password, I'm good to go, because I can download everything
all right.
myself very easily just from the county website.
If we're going to do that, we will soft transition. We'll have a few overlaps. If something doesn't work, we'll do a few packets. And then, a couple months down the road, it's going smooth, and we'll stop printing.
Yeah, maybe have IT to kind of herd us along the first night.
I'm quite sure that we can invite Alan or Federico to be here and be on standby for a couple of cases to make sure everybody's device does what it's supposed to do. And like I say, we'll have a packet overlap for a few cases to make sure it works and we don't hold up the works.
Any major disgruntlement about the idea? You okay with it? Okay. Oh, well, I guess I can be too. Everybody else okay with it? Yeah. Okay, good to go. All right, any public comment? Can I have
So I've moved to adjourn.
made and seconded? Mike seconded too. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Mike says aye also. All
Drink a mojito for me, Mike.
Yeah,
Stay tuned for the rest of the music.
yeah.
This conference is no longer being recorded.